Know your product. This is something that each customer service representative would be told many times. And today on the show, we've got Daniel with us. Welcome, Daniel.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, good. And so today we're going to be talking about know your product, and we're going to kind of break this down into a couple of different steps of this. So
Yeah, it just occurred to me as you were introducing this, like my wife hates this, but I always ask our server at any restaurant, like, what's your favorite thing on the menu? If I never come back here, the one thing I need to die saying I had that thing at that one restaurant. And I've actually had the experience where someone's like, "Oh, well, I don't eat here," and I'm like, what are you doing serving me food here?
Right.
That doesn't make any sense to me. There's something in me that totally breaks my brain. And so anyway, I expect my waiter or waitress in this case scenario to know the product. Like they should be able to go, oh, here's what it is, man. You do this, take that off, add this thing, knockout. Like that's what I'm expecting.
Of course.
That is to me the great customer service experience. So I don't know, maybe as we're talking through this, we could figure out what that is, what that experience is in, online evangelism.
Sure.
So I think as we're kind of building this idea of knowing your product, knowing why you believe what you believe, right? I think the love of the sandwich or whatever would be like, why do I know what I believe? Why do I know that I've tasted and seen that this is good?
Right.
Right?
Oh, there you go.
There's the restaurant experience.
Totally prepared.
That's the idea.
That was all
right?
set up for that one pun joke.
But there's that as being well versed in the scripture. I mean, that's where we get our truth. So some of this idea of how do we know our product as Christians?
Sure.
How have we tasted and seen? From our own experience, and are we in the Word? Are we in Scripture, being fortified, just having the references, I guess, back to the truths that we know?
Right. So that would be kind of the first point, right? Is be in the Word, be reading the Bible.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah, and letting your experience kind of bleeding into this second kind of major point is letting your experience lead you to want to know the seeker's experience in this case.
Right.
So I think knowing that I have a story, I have a faith journey, I've heard it called that, whatever, every church it seems like has their own special way to say that, but knowing that I have a story and that whoever it is that God's bringing me through Echo, through online evangelism, has a story. They're in the midst of whatever the story is. And somehow, this is the cool part, is that our stories get to intersect.
Right.
And there's a point where, two stories intertwine for a brief moment. Who knows? That kind of gets, I don't know, my brain starts going to these fictional, weird, anyway, side story. But that I think that what I'm trying to get at here is I think that it gives us grace to know that I needed grace. I still need grace every day, all the time, and that the person on the other side of whatever digital format I'm engaged with this person, they're a person in need of grace too. So may my story and my journey lend itself to giving grace to this person to understand their experience.
Youth for Christ has what they call 3-story, and it's God's story, your story, and my story, and it's kind of these overlapping circles that kind of represent all of that coming together. So I think that's exactly what it's like, and I think sometimes we feel like I shouldn't share my story, or maybe it'll be inappropriate for me to talk more about my experience because it's putting the light back on me. But I think what I'm finding is we do have these trials and awesome things that happen to us, but all of that helps us strengthen our reliance on God, and then all of that is set up in a way so that it's my testimony, right? So that's the testimony that I get to share, and I can only I can speak to my testimony and share that out to others, right? And so I think sometimes we're timid to do that because it's scary, because we have to be vulnerable. And we have to really share deep things that are highly sensitive or were difficult for us to have gone through. And now we have to share those experiences out. But in the process of, we always talk about the room goes as deep as any one person goes. So if somebody is willing to get outside of the surface and get into a deep level of conversation, then the whole rest of the room, the people in the conversation go down to that deep level, right? So part of our role is to let people in and be vulnerable with them so that they can be vulnerable with us. Vulnerability begats vulnerability.
Yeah, and around that same idea, I've heard the phrase the idea of going first. Everyone's always waiting for somebody to go first.
Yes.
Rarely do we often volunteer to go first.
Sure.
But man, people respond when you go first.
That's right.
So like the person who's reaching out because I think we've talked in previous about someone may come into us and say they're sad. Well, maybe I know of a time in my story where I've been sad. I've been more than sad. I've actually bordered on depressed.
Sure.
And let me tell you a little bit about that. And I'm going first.
Right.
And man, the door that could open into, oh, well, I said I was sad. But in all reality, I am depressed. I'm really feeling the depths of this. So going first, our experience combined with the truth of Scripture, I think is part of that knowing your product. We get to be a part of the product of sorts. Again, want to be careful when we wade through these business terms, but I think we are part of the product. We're a satisfied customer. Those of us who believe and who know the joy that Jesus offers us. So on top of that, part of knowing the product and being the expert that people are looking to reach out to is being on top of modern issues, knowing the kind of the days, not the actual day, but what am I trying to say here? The big challenges that the world is throwing at Christianity right now, kind of what's the hot topics that people are talking about in the news, and just to kind of be aware. I think we can't be good responders. We can't know our product really well if we're asleep.
Yeah, we have to be relevant to what's on their mind. And we're not really saying like change your views in the word of relevant, because I think sometimes Christians especially, they hear a word like that and if they're Christians, they either think a magazine or they think that it's somebody who's like compromising in some way. We're not saying that. We're just saying like you need to be fluent in the language and thought of what people are doing. That doesn't mean you're in agreement with those things, but it means you need to be aware of those, because we've seen a lot of times where someone will quote song lyrics of a popular song or something like that, and that's their quick way of figuring out like, do you get me? Can we actually have a conversation on the same level? Or maybe you're old and out of touch and you're not going to be able to relate to me. So we're always trying to make sure we can be very relevant in our understanding of that.
And I don't think the expectation is that one person knows everything. It's like the trivia master, quiz me. But to be on top of, some current topics, and to understand that, like, I don't know, like just what the people, if you were to go to the marketplace, what are the people talking about? What are the common things? You don't have to know all the cool buzzwords necessarily. But I think Paul modeled this often to the Greeks. I'm Greek. There was a level of camaraderie that, he kind of like managed to get a lot of different people's respect enough to stand toe-to-toe to them with conversation. And I think that's what people are looking for. Like you just said. Are you real, or do you get me?
An example of this is I am a real computer nerd, and so I am really not into sports. So I'm just like, everything about sports, I have no clue about it, right? Well, when men get together in the United States, that seems to be the one thing that like everyone loves to talk about. And I know almost immediately when they start saying certain names, I'm like, I don't know what that name must be. I call it sports ball. So it must be some sports ball person that they're talking about. And so I know that if I was really trying to interact and reach them, I should probably become more fluent on sports, right?
Yeah.
Because then in the process of doing that, I would have I wouldn't have to be like an expert on everything, but I probably would need to know like who won the game and was there any major play that went good or bad.
Yeah.
Right? I don't have to know all the details, but if I had a little bit of something, I could at least begin to have the basis of a conversation, right?
Sure.
So I don't have to know like all the stats of all the players,
but at a certain time of year, maybe like what playoff we're in the middle of,
right.
or just kind of a relative genre of what sport is happening.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's kind of what we're talking about. Have a general awareness, and that seems to always help and never hurt.
Right.
But sometimes it's not enough to just have an awareness, right? Sometimes we need to like look outside of. We need to get specific. So what do we do when we don't really have an answer to something that we're talking to somebody about?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I think it's okay to admit that we don't have like the answer, or that we aren't super aware. First of all, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay.
Right.
It's okay to not know, but to be honest. And I think part of you don't ever want to get caught faking. I think is part of it, because authenticity, again, I hear with every generation, I always hear, well, this is the generation of authenticity. And so it must just be compounding, because like, I think I'm on the third generation of hearing that.
Right.
Or whatever. But I think it's true that people just want authenticity. So if you get caught in the faking, you've just broken down any and all trust and authenticity you've built. But yeah,
well, I was going to resources, and is where I was going with that, was to the next point, but that's cool.
Sure,
no,
of course,
great.
Resources.
Great point, Daniel.
I think that, with technology, apps, I mean, the internet just blew open the doors we have the most access to knowledge than we ever have in the history. I was talking to a group not long ago, and I'm not the first person to claim this, but I thought it was just a fascinating thing to think that since Gutenberg's printing press, and I think it was, of course, people are going to look this up, and I'm going to be so wrong. I think it's like in the 1500s.
Okay.
But if you think about that, it's been like 500 years since I feel like, and this is arguable, but I feel like we've had such advances in the access of knowledge. And now it's cataloged to a point where like I can carry around our phones, and we're all so oblivious to the fact of how much we have. But I think now we no longer is ignorance an excuse. It never really was, but I think it's even less of an excuse now that we have so much access.
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm getting to here, is we have so much access now. So there's some amazing resources from apps. Recently, in the last couple years, we've discovered the Bible Project. I can't say enough good things about the Bible Project. Every person I've talked to about the Bible Project, like everybody loves it. It's entertaining, which is shocker that we can actually have knowledge and be entertained at the same time. It's just so highly, so well produced. We've met the guys. Some of our team has met the guys that make it, produce it. The voice that, if you know the Bible Project, you'd recognize these guys' voices. They're fantastic guys, and they want to do such a good job being true to the holiness of the Scripture that is not lost on them. And they do just such a good job of taking major, big ideas like the Trinity or the wisdom books of Song of Solomon and Proverbs and Psalms, and helping you digest it and wrap your mind around it, taking a book of the Bible and wrapping the context around it so you know where it fits in the greater story of the Bible. I'm telling you, I've spent some of my quiet time in the morning occasionally, if I'm probably one of my lazier quiet times, is to just turn on a Bible Project video, and I'm never left. Well, let me flip that. I'm always just, I learned something. I'm blown away. I take away something. And I think that as Christians, to stay informed, that's to round back to, I'm bragging on the Bible Project.
Right.
Can't say enough good things.
Brought to you by Bible Project.
Thanks, guys. But man, I think every Christian should just go back to such a rich resource that would help you to be able to explain some of these big topics and
Sure.
and scripture, wrestle with it.
And we've done this inside of Echo. What we've done is we've created a resources like panel because that's one of the big objections. We talked in a previous video about overcoming objections. And a big objection that we hear these ambassadors, these volunteers that are having these conversations is, oh, I don't know enough about this particular topic. And so we've partnered with different ministries that have created some really concise and great answers, and then we've made that available as an option inside Echo, so people can go in there and choose a resource pack for each ministry. They can have their own, of course, but they can also choose from some that we have. So, like an example of one is Got Questions, GOT, Got Questions, and so Got Questions has this huge resource library, but they're these pretty simple answers that are about a page and a half, and so we found those are nice to kind of pop in. They can search for those. They don't even have to leave the window and get that result, maybe selectively, not all together, but copy and paste things and bring it over. So it's just important to find those good resources. And I think as Christians, it's good for us to develop our own toolkit of those resources as well, right?
Love that idea.
Because over time, we start figuring out, this works really well and helping. This is a great site for this. And then we just have to be careful about not overwhelming with resources.
Sure.
So that's the other side of that, which is like, oh man, I'm going to just show them everything I've got. I got this and this and this and this. And it's like, well, let's start with one.
Yeah.
Because I think we have to imagine on the receiving side of that, it's like somebody like piling books on, watch this video and then read this book. And it just starts getting heavy and overwhelming. And it's like, whoa, I thought we were just having this first conversation, and they're walking away trying to figure out how to handle all this information. So it's easy to overload. So when in doubt, give them less, not more of it. For sure. But so that's resources.
We keep using the word journey. It's like, don't forget they're on a journey.
Right.
As you're just like that picture that came to mind as you were doing that is like a college or maybe a high school freshman, and they're like, you don't give them their senior books yet. That's overwhelming.
Right.
You want to start them out with the freshmen, the 101s or those books. But and then also in Echo we have this idea of group chat, which I think some people, they enjoy it, but I think it's kind of overlooked as an actual resource because we as a body of believers and people in Echo, those people are believers. To use that as a source of not just support and like we've seen some really cool conversations happen around, guys, be praying for me. I'm involved in a really heavy topic. And
before you keep going, what is group chat? You kind of said that.
Great question. I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
So group chat is actually the kind of the place that you land every time you log in, and that's the place that's kind of the forum for logged in users. You have to be logged in
for the ministry,
of course,
the ministry
for each
side.
Ministry. So it's all
it's not the seekers, though.
Correct.
This is a place just for the people doing the ministry.
Sometimes you get so deep into it, it's like pulling back to exactly. So it's on the ministry side. It's just the volunteers that are signed in, ready to serve, ready to engage with conversations. So this is the place that, if it is a slow time in conversations, where the volunteers can interact and again, get prayer requests. But again, like I think it's a really rich resource because who knows what the stories could be of the volunteers that are also logged in that you can source. Like, hey guys, I have a case that involves some abuse. Has anyone here experienced something? How do I handle this well? And who knows how that could, another person logged in may have some just amazing wisdom, insight, some other resources that would be a great place to lead a person struggling with a certain thing. So just want to mention that that's such a great place to also go. The resources panel, chat, group chat is right there.
Right.
There was a quote in talking about customer support. One of these kind of businesses based around customer support said, customer support is a team sport. And I loved that. And I think as we're talking about laying the template of businesses on top of ministries and seeing how there are parallels, and I think there's something to that. And maybe it's something like with this kind of God's kingdom perspective, maybe it's like something like online evangelism is a community effort. or something like that.
Right.
I think that we
Right.
talked about every story. I think there's something really powerful when we all have a story to give. We all have our own experiences that we can share to help build up the body. And in this case, I think, in this context, to let that overflow to helping someone else that's reaching out to us, a seeker that's come in looking for a conversation.
I love it.
Yeah, I think that's all I've got right now.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, if customer support is a team sport, then go sports ball. Thanks for joining us on this show, and I hope these have been helpful to you. Please feel free to leave a comment below. We'd love to interact with you. And yes, we talk about Echo quite a bit because that's the thing that we're building. You may have your own tool, and it may be working great for you, of course. But if you ever want to know more about Echo, we'd love to have a conversation with you about that as well. And you can see more at echoglobal.org. Thanks for watching. Make sure and like and subscribe to our channel. Click that bell so that you'll be notified every time we have a new video coming out. And I wanted to make you aware that we have some incredibly awesome resources totally free for you, whether you are or are not an Echo customer. Just go to echoglobal.org/resources and you can look at all of them totally free. echoglobal.org/resources. Like seriously, like now is a great time to go echoglobal.org/resources.